Okay, I want to start off by giving all praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rakah, Kwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who teacheth the Bible in 100% truth, and shalom to the hopeful elect of the 12 tribes of Israel, especially the 144,000, who consist of the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans in the land of the Americas, as well as the speckled bird, the Israelite foreigners living amongst the other nations. Shalom to you. Okay, this is just a short video just off the back of my previous upload. I spoke of World War III, and in that previous video I was explaining that what we're witnessing at the minute with the war between the US, the small hats, and Iran are firing back by hitting various military bases in different areas which belong to the US. And so, at the minute, I was going in the previous video, I was going into the fact that obviously there's a lot of talk about World War III, but when you look at it, by definition of the word, it's actually a regional war rather than a world war at the minute. You'd have a local war, which is, for example, something like the small hats in Iran going at it. The US have joined in. So Iran have now had to strike back by hitting multiple bases which are located in different countries in that area, and that's what escalates it to a regional war. And so in a minute we're going to look at what we actually need to go from this point to a world war. That was the natural question. Obviously didn't come to my mind at the time. I uploaded the video and then afterwards I had that thought. But before I jump into that, this is Joel chapter 3 verse 2. It says, "And I will also gather all nations and bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat." It says to here Jehoshaphat, but you'd actually say this word would be better said as Jehoshaphat, which is Yahweh's decision. It says, "And will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel." The word plead, when you look at you go back to the Hebrew, you find the word judge. So pretty much I will judge with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. And this area is talking about the Middle East, Levant, what they refer to as the Middle East. And this is Revelation 16 and 16. It says, "And he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon." And again, the pronunciation would be Harmageddon, and the translation of that would be Mountain of Troops. So you have this place where it's the Most High's decision, Yahweh's decision, Jehoshaphat. It's also called Harmageddon, Mountain of Troops. So this is World War III. It's going to be in the Levant, in what they call the Middle East. And obviously at the minute, we're seeing trouble between, a regional war between the small hats and the US versus Iran. Like I said in the previous video, it's a regional war. When you look at what's actually happening, there's a lot of talk about World War III or World War, which is nice because we want prophecy to come to pass. But regional war is actually where we're at. So then I asked myself, well, what would happen from where we are at the minute to take us from this to a world war? What would define that? And as you can see here, what would need to happen to the current war with US and Iran for it to turn to WW3? So while there is no single official definition of what would constitute World War III, it says geopolitical analysts and recent reports on the current US-Israel-Iran conflict suggest several critical escalation triggers that could transform this regional war into a global one. And you notice I didn't say to AI, what would turn this regional war to a world war. I just wrote what would turn this war into a world war, or into WW3, which is a world war, the third one. So, but the AI knows that this is a regional war, and that's how he's described it. So, some triggers that could transform the regional war into a global one. It's not a long read. There's 4 points here, so it's quite short. Number one, involvement of other major powers. This is the most significant step towards a world war would be the direct military entry of other global superpowers. So China or Russia, Russia or China's entry. Experts note that for the conflict to be considered a world war, another major nation state would likely need to join on Iran's side. Russia, which has described current US actions as a threat to global stability, says could see the conflict as a trigger for broader war if the US continues a course of regime change. So, like at the minute, even though, like I say, there's about 13 countries involved and having to go out and defend bases that Iran are hitting, on paper, Iran are quite strong. They're stronger than they seem. Obviously, on paper, it looks like, this is what I was saying the other day. On paper, it looks like, oh, America have made a mistake. They've entered this war, and it's deeper than they realize. America want to get into war. That's the Rothschilds have that corporation, and they want to put them to war to do their job. They have to get the people on side. So, they to go in there at first, they say, no, it's going to be a quick thing. That's to just keep the people quiet while they start it off. Once you start it off, then now they can just continue it for as long as they want. So what they're doing to the people is they're duping the people. Oh, he looks stupid. Oh, you entered this war, and now you've bitten off more than you can chew, and that ultimately is how Babylon's going to go down. But there's an art to it, and it's a game, and these elites want the war. They want to get into the war. They want it to be long run. That's what I keep talking about, the elites. They want it to be long run, to wind down this economy and to make it finally burst, to ultimately give you that chip. That's what they want to do. So they want it long and drawn out. They can't say to the people, oh, we're going to go and do that. So what they say to the people is, oh, we need to fix this problem over there. Look, they're protesting, they're killing people. So let's just go in there for a couple of weeks, sort it out, and we'll be back. And everybody goes, yeah, go on, go. And they get there and they go, oh, it's like that mechanic. You get there, all you went was for an oil change. And when you come to pick the car up, he's going, boy, well, and then you go, oh, here we go. I found this, I found that problem, and now it's a big expense. America the banking elites, they want to bust that corporation to reset the system. So they put them into the war, and they want it drawn out to create inflation, and then hyperinflation, and then eventual total crash beyond repair. So, but then like I say, when you go back to this regional war, this thing about superpower. Well, at the minute, it's just a superpower, which is America, with the small hats, who have got the strongest air force in the world. I think they've got a hell of an army, and they on paper is them bullying a small nation. Don't forget, let the weak say I'm strong. So on paper, Iran are weak. So on paper, like you have a boxing match, well, on paper, this guy should smash this guy. Yeah, but when it gets down to it being in the ring, it's a different story. So it's the same thing here. On paper, it's a superpower plus a small hat's beating up a little guy. But what America's going to find out, or what it seems, is, oh, America have just found out that that little guy is stronger than he's fought. Oh, never mind. We're going to have to go to war. And that's what Esau loves, war. He's blessed for it. He loves it, and he's going to use it to mess up this economy. That's the ultimate goal. So that's why it can't be a world war, because you just got a superpower plus one bullying a smaller nation. Obviously, we know how prophecy goes. Russia will definitely join in. China will, take play their role, and we know that ultimately America will be destroyed. So will the small hats, the land where the small hats occupy. So we know how it ends. Direct conflict between great powers. A world war typically requires multiple great powers directly fighting each other across multiple continents, rather than just through proxies. That's why it can't be a world war, because it's a bunch of proxies. So, number two, widening of the regional scope. A regional war becomes a world war when it spills over its borders to impact global systems or involves a large coalition of nations. Coalition expansion. Nations like France, Germany, and the UK have already indicated they are prepared to defend their interests in the Gulf following Iranian missile strikes. It says if more European or Asian nations are drawn into direct combat, the scope shifts from regional to intercontinental. So, global choke points. If Iran were to disrupt or block the Strait of Hormuz, a critical lane for global oil, it could force every major economy to get involved to protect their energy supplies. And that's happening. And it's just a matter of time before these supplies, these things are affected. And we're waiting for the prices to increase. And again, it all goes back to that chip, breaking the system so they can bring that chip in. So America don't want to go to war. The banking elites, the owners, the franchise owners of America, no matter what the fans say, forget about the fans. Sometimes fans get duped. Sometimes they tell you something in the media, but they go and do something else. But you're still a fan. You're still going to be contributing to the football team, to the franchise, to the corporation. But the owners, the trillionaire owners, they have their plans and they're going to do what they want to do. So that's on a regional level. Number three is escalation of tactics and targets. It says the nature of weapons and the strategic goals used can also serve as a point of no return. Okay, nuclear escalation. The use of nuclear weapons by any party is frequently cited as the ultimate threshold for a third world war. And we know that obviously once ICBMs start going in. But again, according to scripture, we know they will be used at the very end, towards the end of the war, which is ultimately on the day of the Lord. Full-scale invasion. It says while current strikes are largely air and naval based, transition to a full-scale ground invasion or an attempted regime change is seen by some as a path that could lead to an uncontrollable global escalation. And there's talk of the Kurds, and then obviously America eventually having to send troops in on the ground, and so on and so forth. So we're getting there. We're escalating towards that direction. Naval blue water battles. Some analysts argue that a massive naval battle involving aircraft carriers beyond local waters, such as Chinese carriers entering the fray, would be a definitive sign of World War III. Like I say, America have sent their carriers in, but ultimately on paper, the war is a superpower plus one beating up a little guy. We know that this is where least of the flock. So that little 1948 the babies, they led their big brother into this, and as we're telling you, this is gonna take you to all the way to the day of the Lord, World War III, so on and so forth. Number four, simultaneous global conflicts. This is a World War III scenario. Might not be one singular war, but rather the simultaneous eruption of several major conflicts. There's multiple fronts. Fears exist that if Middle East conflict aligns with a Russian invasion of a NATO country like Poland or a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, the US military would be stretched across multiple fronts, effectively creating a global war. And that will happen because obviously as America get involved in this war, they stretch themselves out. Other nations will come into back the Middle East. It will escalate. It will go on. It'll become a big problem. And then, these other nations like China and Taiwan, they'll see opportunities. So, you don't expect that not to happen. If other countries are saying, well, we got our opportunity to go over here, America is supposed to defend it, but they're stretched over there, then, and this, again, this is what we're saying, this whole thing of, don't forget, you go back to the um, Albert Pike plan, letter to Mazzini. It's about creating the small hats to go against the Middle East so they can ultimately destroy each other. That will bring a third war. What they really want to do is then use that to bring a new economic system in. In the meantime, they get to kill a lot of people. A lot of people will be dead. You think about it, that's why they want to happy to destroy whatever's going on in the Middle East. And this ultimately goes back to the Roman Catholic Church trying to control the Middle East. Like, they paid Muhammad to do what he did, and they created this religion. And now they're at the point where, well, we just might as well create a war over there, and loads of people will be dead. Obviously, it involves troops coming from different nations, and they have their plan. They had their plan to depopulate the earth, as well as, obviously to install the population with the device under the skin to control them, to ultimately be gods, be like gods to the people, like the Most High. So this is where we're heading, and oh yeah, like saying what I've just said, all that's their plan. But at some point, what you're reading here, all these different things that we're reading here, they will come into play. So like I say, when war is really kicking off in the Middle East, China will see opportunities in Taiwan and take advantage of it. So this is where things start to escalate, go out of hand. You see, the like I said, the Albert Pike plan doesn't start saying, oh, we're going to do all this, we're going to have to go out to there and there, but these things will happen, and then eventually it will end with Russia just sending ICBMs. The EU nations will do it, and then it will just be the end of America, be the end of the Middle East. Yeah, and then you think some of these elites won't even be in some of them places. The Rothschilds, they're in England, so where will they be? In England. But then the Most High will still get them, because the earth shakes when those ICBMs hit. The earth will rock, the ground will crack. Nobody's going to escape the judgment. And then ultimately, with these elites, a lot of them will be in their bunkers, their underground bunkers, in their safe houses. And as scriptures tell you, after the day of the Lord, using that spiritual power, we will round them up, drag them up, and put them to work. So that's, like I said in the previous video, we're not in world war just yet. We're in a regional war, but there's a little bit of definition as to what you need to do, what needs to happen from here to go to a world war, and it will happen. So you will see a lot of these things take place. It could be today, could be next week, could be in 6 months' time, and we wait to see what happens. I mean, last night I was at work and I kept seeing headlines of them saying, "Oh, there's peace deals. They're going to try and talk it out. Now they're going to try and sit down on the table." I was like, "Okay, here we go." But sometimes you just can't believe what you're reading in the media. We can only see what happens. It could happen like that. It could die down. That could be the end of a contraction, and we could wait for another one, or it could just continue. And then there could be other contractions that come later down the line with other things, which bring more intensity and anguish to the earth, which is what ultimately the Most High is going to do in that great time of judgment. But before I go, there's one more article I just came across this morning. So I wanted to do that. Like I said, I made the video yesterday or the day before, and then I was thinking, okay, I should really add that little bit to it, so I wanted to make it this short video quickly today. But then this morning I came across this, which again goes in line with the topic. This is Evil Alliance Putin helping Iran attack US military as Russia shares comprehensive intel on American targets in major WW3 escalation. So exactly what we're saying. So now we know, like, obviously that happens. We know China, Russia will help Iran on some level, but we also know how the world war will end. But we still got to wait for it to happen. And then so what you're seeing it happen. So even though you'll have talk about things sometimes, you got to wait for it to come in the mainstream media, and then it becomes like the official quota. Okay, now we're this, and then you could actually classify this world as in that state or zone or whatever else. In this case, is World War Three. So, like I say, we've just gone through a definition. What classifies us to actually be in a world war? And in the meantime, like I say, we all know Putin will help Iran. We all know China will help them. But until it actually becomes an official thing, that's when other nations will use it and say, well, we have to get involved because now that's happened and it's official. It's not just talk. So this is where we're heading towards. This is published 7:59, pretty much 8 o'clock this morning, 6th of March. Russia is reportedly slipping intelligence to Iran as what's left of slain supreme leader's regime lashes out with attacks across the Middle East. Pathetic Putin is helping Iran target US military assets, the Washington Post reported. See, this is what I don't like about the Sun, because they just start throwing in stupid stuff. Pathetic Putin. So they clearly want to. So when you talk like that, you clearly don't like him, which means you're never going to tell me about anything that he's done which is good. So now I can't trust you as a source. But we use it to bring out certain bits of information. And the other thing as well is, it says here, Russia is reportedly slipping intelligence to Iran as to what's left of the slain supreme leader's regime. Lashes out with attacks across the Middle East. So what they're trying to make out is that, see, this is how the Western media will fool you. In the West, you vote and you vote these people in, and so if you lose a leader, you then have to go through a long drawn process of voting and deciding and this and that to get a new leader. So because people over here in the West are so stupid, they'll use that understanding and make you think that that's how it works over there. So they'll say, look, we've killed their leader. Now they've got to, work it all out. It's all a big mess. But they don't work like that over there. They work in families. So the talk is that his son is going to take his place. And what do you think his son's going to do? His son's going to do the same thing. They're saying that his son is, the Ayatollah's son is more militant than his dad. So it's just all, stupid propaganda nonsense. But carrying on here, Russia has supplied Iran with information about the whereabouts of US warships and aircraft. Sources told the newspaper. One source said the intel sharing appears to be a fairly comprehensive effort. It's the first sign that Mad Vlad's regime is joining in on the conflict since fighting started at the weekend with Trump's epic fury blitz. Sources said that Russia's intel comes as the battered Iranian regime's ability to locate US targets for itself has been degraded. This is less than a week since that strike killed their supreme tyrant. I'm not going to read on or keep going into this. It's nothing. You pretty much got the story there. They just tell you a couple of basics, and that's the thing. I can't really read these types of people when they're Mad Vlad and Pathetic Putin. So you clearly don't like him. That's okay. You don't have to like him, but if you're now going to present yourself as a source of information, but you've declared yourself as being biased, so then how can I take you seriously? But there is information in it that Putin's sharing comprehensive intel. Now, I don't know, this might come out more and more. And like I say, the more it becomes an official thing, then it will become an official thing for other nations to have to deal with. Again, it kind of comes down to boots on the ground. A little bit like Ukraine and Russia. Yes, we know that European nations are supplying Ukraine with weapons or money for weapons, and technically you could call that a world war because they're helping. They're all helping together in this one cause. But really, what classifies it as an official is when the troops go in. When they send troops in, it's like, oh, now they've arrived, and that's when you. And they said it in there when you go back through that list. It mentioned somewhere in here. I'm not going to read it again, but it mentioned about actual sending troops in, so on and so forth. So we keep watching, as it says here, Revelation. I didn't read verse 15, 16, and 15, but it says here, "Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth," and that's what we're doing. It says, "And keepeth his garments." The understanding of this knowledge, and the understanding of the Most High, that He's in control of everything, who He is, and how He has prophecy playing out, and what we should have faith in. And we keep watching, and that is us keeping our garments, lest He walk naked. It says, "And they see His shame." It says, "And He gathered them together into a place called, in the Hebrew tongue, Harmagadwan, mountain of troops." So this is, we're watching at that perfect time, just before Armageddon, taking place in Yahweh the Valley of Decision, World War III in the Middle East. So I'm going to leave it right there. I hope that was edifying. I just wanted to add that information from the previous video. And until next time, all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakak Wadash. Until next time, Shalom.